right. Hey there, everyone. I've got my face on the wrong screen here. All right. Really pleased to have you all join us today. If you've never met me before, my name's Evan Wong. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Checkbox. Really great to see in the audience some friendly faces and some new ones as well. Today's session is going to be a little bit different from the usual webinars that Checkbox puts on. There's not going to be a guest speaker alongside with me, and we're not going to be diving deep into a lot of thought leadership. Today is more focused on the Checkbox product itself. So most of this session will be looking at the actual Checkbox technology, and for me to walk you through a lot of the more recent developments on the Checkbox technology, particularly around contracts and matter management surrounding the topic of AI. If you've been following me on LinkedIn or our company page, you'll notice as well recently we've done a big sort of PR launch of this new offering that we're calling the Legal Services Hub. So you can think of this as being sort of a hand-in-hand of what that actually means in terms of the product as we go along. By the way, I like to keep these sessions interactive. I know it's sort of like me presenting one way to you in a webinar format, but if you can use the chat or the Q&A as much as you can, that will help keep me entertained and also you as well to get your questions answered along the way. So please do not hold back. If you have any questions along the way, just chuck them into the chat. All right. So if like I said, if for those of you meeting me for the first time, my background is I've spent about, I think about 7.5 years now working with legal teams around automation and workflow, really trying to help teams shift their time from low value work to the high value work, right? Our company mission is to enable meaningful work for all, and we do that through the technology that we create. So I want to take you on a little bit of a journey. When we started Checkbox, we built a platform which was a no-code legal automation tool. So some of our customers, I think, are on the call today. Rewind many years ago, Checkbox was built as a no-code legal automation platform, which really meant that we were empowering legal teams to streamline manual processes without IT. And that was really, really cool because it meant that innovation was as fast as we could come up with ideas and be able to align on the business side without having to be bogged down by coding skills or waiting in the IT queue. And we were able to do this for many of the great companies here in Australia and many more that's not on this screen. We've quickly become the market leader in APAC. And we're very proud of sort of the customers that we obviously serve with this mission. So by using Checkbox in the traditional sense, just to give you a sense of where we've come from, Checkbox have been used by these customers primarily to solve a few different common challenges. I've seen thousands of use cases go through the platform, but one of the most common ones in the Australian market is for CLM. Now, not everyone may call it CLM or contract lifecycle management, but I think we're all doing it. Things like contract requests, self-service contracts, whether that's NDAs or low-value service agreements or partnership agreements, through to contract approval, thinking about even the contract risk matrix that you might have in your organization, through to e-signature, through to negotiation, right? All of these elements make up the CLM wheel, and Checkbox has been used as a way to handle a lot of these, particularly in a market where the heavyweight CLM technology that you might see, say in the US, is too expensive or overkill for the use cases here in Australia. So CLM has been a big piece of what our customers use Checkbox to do. Another piece is risk assessments. So think of things like doing calculations in the background that might be scored depending on certain factors. Let's say it's a privacy breach. How many people were affected? Is this publicly available information? How long has the breach been exposed for? All of these qualities may have different weightings, and when you kind of plug it into a bit of a model, it might tell you whether this is a red, amber, green, or a critical, extreme, mid, low risk. And depending on the risk classification, you can then obviously trigger different sort of notifications or reporting even to regulators, right? And so we've seen Checkbox being used in that way. Very different from CLM, right? And then there's breach reporting, which is kind of like an extension of the piece I mentioned just now around risk. But this is more around how do we create the right escalation points, as well as the documentation and the notifications that might be presented in a highly regulated industry. So things like, again, privacy breaches, but also you might have very specific concepts to your business. We work with different types of liquor and supermarket providers, and they may obviously report things like underage drinking, as an example, right? And so there's some nuances that might apply to your industries, and we've seen our customers use Checkbox for breach reporting as well. There's also more general legal requests, things like intellectual property or trademark clearance or marketing review requests that typically go through Checkbox, and our customers use our technology to be able to collect the right information upfront and set the right expectations and stage gates as these requests are made from the business through to the legal team. And look, I said I've seen thousands. There are many, many more, but I wanted to give you a sense first of where we're coming from so that you can appreciate where we're going. All of this automation has helped our customers like Telstra save thousands of hours across their legal team every single year. They've helped companies like Invisalign push 96% of their NDAs to zero touch. There's only 4% now of NDAs that their legal team actually manage when it gets negotiated. And it's been able to turn, I think it's 4 weeks turnaround for a standard NDA down to less than 1 hour. And then companies like Woolworths have also mentioned that they've been able to bring anywhere between 50 to 80% of their manual requests down, so that the 20%, which is exponentially more complex, can be focused on by the legal team. All right, but even though we've had all the success for many years, one thing we realized was that automation and self-service is really only one part of the bigger picture. In fact, they needed to be more connected with the business on one side and the legal team on the other. For those of you who have dabbled in self-service and automation, you'll realize that when you do deploy these tools, typically the way the business accesses them is a little bit disjointed from their usual workflow. They may need to go to an intranet portal, or they may need to bookmark a certain link. It's not really connected with where they already are. And on the flip side, well, what happens if something can't be solved using self-service? What if it needs someone from legal? There's often, again, a disconnect between the system or the tools that we deploy for automation and self-service with the legal team, and keeping them actually connected with the entire ecosystem. And so when we think about automation, we've really, in the recent times, developed or completed the model, and that is intake on one end, which is connecting better with the business stakeholders, and on the other end, matter management, which is connecting better with our legal team, who obviously are managing the higher risk, more important and impactful work. And so that leads me to kind of introducing you very excitedly to the concept of the Legal Services Hub. So we've really brought together the concept of intake, self-service and automation, and matter management to really help legal teams do the three things that we believe permeate through everything that we do, which is, one, capture, whether that's information from people or systems. Two, service, whether that is self-service or literally a lawyer servicing that request, and then reporting as well, to be able to have the holistic data across not only the work that people are doing, but also the data behind the systems and self-service that we've deployed. I said that this webinar will be primarily focused on the product demo, which is coming up after one more slide, because I want to first explain to you how this looks like in the bigger picture. So if you imagine your business clients coming to you for whatever reason, whatever they need from legal, they're probably going to come through multiple different channels. Now, like I said, historically, they might be pushed or forced to adopt a new portal, to go to this tile and click this button every time they need legal. But the better approach is to really meet the business where they are, so that there is no or little change management required. Whether that's meeting them in Teams or Slack, meeting them in email, in SharePoint, in Salesforce, in Oracle, whatever your system is. Maybe it's another legal technology that you have in place already. The idea is to allow them to natively, where they already work, initiate a request, for that request to then be fielded and, first of all, not automatically sent to the legal team, because as you all appreciate, sometimes we get questions that are, should be self-answered, or they're questions that aren't even for the legal team, or it's for the wrong person, right? And so we want to create a filter to save or protect our precious legal team time on the things that really matter. And so if we can solve it using self-service and it involves an answer, then Checkbox has an AI product, an intelligent chatbot, that is able to answer those common questions for you. And we'll get a sneak peek into how this works in a moment. This is a lot more than your traditional chatbots back in the day when you hard code every question and possible answer and every single decision tree path in the background. This is true AI being able to interpret and be much more flexible and fluid to the questions that come in. If it's self-service and it's not an answer, but let's say it is to do with the process, right? It's not just getting an answer, it's actually completing a business process. Well, that's really where our roots come from. It's the workflow product. It's the no-code drag and drop. And this usually, as I've seen, solves two different types of problems: contracts, which we talked about, like the CLM, and processes, things like, like the breach reporting or the risk assessment, or even things like share trading, whether whether an employee can trade within a certain window of time if you're a publicly listed company, right? Or whether in a multi-entity organization, which director actually needs to sign off on this particular transaction. So many, many processes sit under that little bucket of process. But what if we can't solve it using self-service? Well, if it needs a person, if it needs an expert or a human being, that's where the matters and collaboration part of the product comes in. It's to be able to help triage it and escalate it, but then also to create the way to help the lawyers manage the actual work as well. All right. So let's now jump into the product demo. I'm going to show you this in practice. We're going to see this diagram here, this operating or this service delivery model happen live. So let's take a look. I'm going to start actually in Teams. It doesn't have to be Teams. This could be email, like I said, could be Slack, could be a SharePoint site, could be wherever your business clients live. I'm only using Teams because I feel like some of you who have seen demos in the past probably have already seen tools being launched out of, say, like a SharePoint. So we can do that. Let's do something a bit more interesting, which is let's go into Teams. Now, Teams is an interesting medium because it is typically a place where people collaborate and use chat. It's less of a place where people are necessarily finding information or like used to seeing like a bit of a portal-like interface. So here, what we're going to do is present them with a chat-like interface. They're going to come over here, and instead of messaging, say, legal, they may go ahead and ask for, let's say, a contract request. Let's say it's something like, I need help with a contract. Okay. Now, this is the business user we're talking about, right? And so we don't always get the most helpful instructions right off the bat from a business user. And so I'm trying to emulate that experience by using pretty low fidelity language. You can see that the bot responds pretty quickly by saying, well, I can help you with that, but like, what specifically do you need assistance with? So the AI is able to clarify and ask further questions. It also has the ability to, take them into a deeper intake form if that's what they prefer. But let's continue with the conversation here. I'm going to say, let's start with maybe one of the use cases, which is I have a contract on hand, which I wish to sign. Who needs to approve before I do so? I'm sure many of you have this question from the organization, like who needs to sign off before I execute? You can see here that the bot again reads into our own specific organizational policies. When I say our, I don't mean checkbox, I mean yours, personalized. And it says if it's below a certain contract value, it is these set of people, and between these ranges, it's a different set of people, etc. Now, your organization might have this different. It might be contract value and maybe service line or geography or entity. There may be multiple different factors. This is just a demo and an example of a very simple, understandable factor, which is contract value. This, again, is not reading off, say, the internet or the world's knowledge. It's not making it up. This is trained specifically on your organization's policies and your delegation of authority. So that's pretty cool. And if I click onto this link, it actually takes me to the workflow that collects all of the approvals. It's not just giving me the answer. It's actually going to go ahead and then get the approvals with the audit trail and process the rest of this this business process. But let's take it for a spin. Let's go for a different contract use case. Let's say I don't know, different request. I am about to, let's say, share sensitive, let's say, documents with a potential vendor. Is there an agreement I need in place before sharing? Okay. So in this case, we've kind of switched it up. And you can see here that the bot responds, again, very lightning fast. Yes, before sharing sensitive documents with a potential vendor, you should have an NDA in place. And then it gives me a preliminary description of what an NDA is, so that as a business user, again, maybe I'm from your commercial team, maybe I'm from your compliance team, maybe I'm not working with NDAs day in, day out. This allows me to kind of do a sense check. Cool, yeah, this does sound about right. And in this case, not only is it giving me the fact that I need to use an NDA, I can also click on the link. And again, this will launch the specific workflow, the specific self-help tool that will help me with my request. And you can see here, it's correctly taken me to an NDA generation tool. Now, this bot, by the way, can be trained on 10, 50, 100 different policies and workflows covering like NDAs to share trading, to privacy breaches, to whistleblowing policies, whatever you want. And it has the intelligence to know that based upon this request, that it needs to pull up the NDA response and the NDA workflow. That's what it's doing here. And so when we rewind back to what I was talking about in the slides of, hey, traditionally automation tools are sort of built and deployed in isolation. And whilst they generate tremendous ROI, as you saw from our customers, it's still a little bit disconnected. And at some point and at some scale, it's hard to figure out which tool do we have and where do I go for what. The AI kind of solves for all of that. It helps organize your organization's knowledge, policies, self-help tools through truly a single front door, but not in the traditional sense of needing people to find the front door and learn about the new front door. The front door is now everywhere. It's in email, it's in Teams, it's in Slack, right? So it's that's really the power of what AI enables for technologies like Checkbox today. All right, so that's pretty cool. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to pump them in the chat. I'll answer them as I go. But let's go through this little bit of a journey here along the NDA workflow. And then I want to show you something that's a little bit different as well. Now, I think many of you by now may have seen a lot of NDA demos, but I promise you that I will show you something new here. Because after spending years automating a lot of different contracting workflows, we've sort of developed a sense of best practice. And I want to share some of these best practices with you today. I know there's some customers on the call. This might be helpful for you too. So one of the things that we like to do nowadays at Checkbox is whenever someone makes a contracting request, whether it's NDA or an MSA or other, the first thing we like to do is check if there is already a copy in existence. Because what we don't want to do is create self-service for everybody to just jump in and start creating duplicative copies. That's not good from a governance perspective, but also if legal is then involved in each one of these, that's redundant work, right? So here you have the ability to do things like, well, let's say I'm contracting with Tesla. Checkbox is able to read into your existing repository, whether that's SharePoint, whether that is Checkbox, whether that is some other tool that uses Google Drive. And it's able to then extract out all of the existing contracts for that particular entity. It also is able to display the key information or the contract metadata to give you more context. Let's say there are maybe 3 NDAs with Tesla. That's not the case here, but let's say there was. And each one was for a different purpose. Of course, you wanted to pick the correct purpose for the transaction that or the business activity that you're doing right now. And so you could easily add a third column, which is purpose, with a short form text explaining what this specific NDA is for. In this case, let's go ahead and select the suggested Tesla NDA. It seems to still be active given it's 15th of November, so I'll just click onto it. You can see here that there is an existing NDA in place, and if I click next, it's going to go ahead and direct me or take me straight to that copy of the NDA. This is not checkbox being slow. This is actually SharePoint being slow. I'm just going to point that out. So we have here SharePoint hosting the contract between Tesla and Checkbox that was previously executed. So as a business user, I can just download that copy and away I go. Fantastic. I get what I want straight away, and the legal team doesn't have to be bothered with such a simple request, and we don't end up with a duplicate either. So fantastic. But let's say we don't have an existing agreement. Let's make up a different company. Let's just say it is Coca-Cola. Okay. In this case, we don't have an existing NDA with Coca-Cola. It tells me that here. So you can see the text is also dynamic, right? Previously, it said we had an existing NDA in place. This one, it says no existing. It's all dynamic content. When I click next, you'll see that it doesn't take me to a copy because there is none. Instead, it now takes me to what you would probably usually expect when you enter an NDA demo, which is filling in forms, right? So I'm going to do this quickly because I assume most of you have seen these kinds of demos before. And if you haven't, then this should be pretty cool for you. I should probably finish off that. But you can see it's actually live. This is not some fake demo hard-coded integration. This is a real integration. It's reading into, in this case, the Australian Business Register and pulling all of the legal entities and their ABNs. You can also pull other things like registered address and things like that, but we've just set it up for ABN and the entity name. So let's go ahead and say it's the CCA, Coca-Cola Amatil, one of our customers. And you can see here that it pre-populates the rest of the form with the information so that I didn't have to go out, do an ABN check, come in, data entry, maybe get it wrong. Let's say this is Coke. Let's say this is the polar bear, like the Coca-Cola polar bear. And let's just say this is Evan plus Coke at checkbox.ai. That allows the email to come to me, by the way. There's different fields, dates, drop downs. I'm going to go quick here. Like I said, you've seen plenty of demos with form fields, I'm sure. But what I do want to show you is the second piece of best practice that I typically see with contract management, which is, well, first I should show you the fact that the document has been generated. So that's fantastic, right? So we've got the document, the NDA generated with all the specific clauses and even the footers included between, I think, ourselves and Coca-Cola. The next set of best practice that I like to show is really around what do you do at this point and what's your interaction with the counterparty? A lot of automation tools stop at this point once you have the contract generated. You download it, you take it offline, and then you might send it off, negotiate it, make edits. But at that point, the automation really stops. What we like to do at Checkbox is really extend it right through to the end of the life cycle. You'll see here that I've just received an email, here in fact, saying, "Dear Coke, I hope this email finds you well," and it gives a set of instructions. It's really stretching now into external parties. It's going to the counterparty and saying, "Hey, like we've just drafted this NDA for you. Please take a look." And it doesn't have to go straight to the counterparty. I know some of you might be thinking, "Oh, I don't want my business users doing self-service contracts and then for it to go straight to the counterparty." It can do that, like in this case, but it can also have stage gates in between, right? For legal to kind of step in between, approve, and tick the box before it moves on to the counterparty. But here we have the counterparty who gets that email, they click onto the link, and without any idea of what Checkbox is or needing any licenses, they can enter this specific step, which is asking for their next action. For those of you who use Checkbox, you'll know that this can be all white labeled. So again, they don't need to know this is Checkbox. This could very well say your company name and colors. But they'll come here and we give them a few different options. We like to then allow them to confirm that they're happy with the document and proceed with e-signature, whether that's DocuSign or Adobe Sign. And so if they select this option and they click next, this will go straight into the e-signature platforms. But they can also make minor changes as well. So over here, we've pre-baked some pre-approved changes. Things like maybe we got the wrong entity. Maybe it's not Coca-Cola Amatil. Maybe it's now Coca-Cola Euro Pacific Partners. Right? And so, of course, we would allow the counterparty to make those changes because we want them to be able to correct things like this that our legal team doesn't have to pre-review again. And so the contract will be regenerated with the corrected legal entity name, and then we can probably move straight into signature and really save cycles on both sides. Or what about the situation where we got the signatory wrong? The person we send it to isn't the person who's signing. So again, they could actually change the person who's signing. Or even things like the governing law. Maybe we're fine with it not being in New South Wales. We're fine with it being in Victoria. And so again, we don't really want to create extra cycles on both sides. We can just have these pre-approved changes, and as they select them, it regenerates the contract and continues on with the workflow. But let's say they really do want to make some changes. They want to make changes to things that are pretty material, like liability cap or, I don't know, maybe ownership of IP. Then we can continue with the workflow with like a redlining component, the ability to take the document that we've just created and pop it into a Word-like interface. Again, traditionally, workflow tools don't do this. As soon as you need to edit the document, it falls out of automation and you have to do all of this offline. You lose the digitization, the status tracking, and any automations that follow. But again, in Checkbox, what we can do is make red lines. So I can go ahead and just like I would in Word, strike text out. I can add text. I'm just going to do gibberish today, right? I can add comments. Right? I mean, I've really covered the three key things that you probably want to do in a red line, right? And when I go ahead and finish my red lines here, change a bunch of things, the system is able to make version controls automatically. And so as we go from party back and forth, all the different versions are captured. Of course, the counterparty or the receiving party is able to see all of the red lines, accept them as always, or reject them as well, right? And then they're able to also go into the document history to look at previous versions, which are tracked along the way. Okay. Now, everything that you saw, by the way, the different options for the counterparty and how you handle some of those edge cases to really push the automation along, these are just examples. Like I said, it's what I've seen as best practice. You don't have to do that. Checkbox is a no-code tool, so you can customize the language and the pathways and the options that you give. I've certainly seen companies who said, I don't even want to give redlining as an option. I don't want them to even think about the fact they can redline the NDA, because if you give them the power, they'll do it. And so you might even omit the redlining option altogether, and only at the at the point where they basically push back offline that you then provide that option to them. But here we're at the end of a contract management lifecycle workflow. We hit the kind of execute button and it flies over to DocuSign, which will send me an email in a moment to effectively complete off that workflow process. There it is. So you can see here my example with Coke and Polar Bear has come through, and the contract that we've created is, of course, sitting in DocuSign, ready to sign as well. Okay. So again, I'm just showing you the flow from what was a intake process with some questions over in the Teams environment, flow all the way through into a request, all the way into signature, right? To remind you, we started here with a set of questions and answers, flowing seamlessly into a workflow, and then seamlessly through all those different options, right through to signature with even redlining and negotiation considered. But now I want to show you something that's also quite new and interesting, which is, all right, Evan, we've seen a lot of contract automation use cases over the years. What about review? What about contract review? Well, let me jump over to here. imagine again, we come through this time, let's say email. Someone sends us an email at legal@companyxyz.com. And again, the AI reads the email and says, hey, this is something we can help you with. In fact, why don't you go ahead and upload the contract that you want reviewed on this screen here. And so the user clicks through and they go ahead and find the third-party paper that they're looking to get reviewed by legal. Okay, this is not a contract that is generated on our own paper. This is a third-party paper that we've received that we want legal to help us to review. Okay, so we've uploaded the document. Let's say we want this reviewed today and need this yesterday, as they always say, needed this yesterday, and they'll click next. Checkbox also now has AI that is able to read the document. Now, I know that some of you are probably already turning your minds to, oh, is this gonna auto redline the agreement? No, that's not what we do. We're not trying to replace the judgment or the expertise of the lawyers. We're not doing auto redlining or negotiation. What we're doing here is actually taking out all the administrative aspects of contract management. What the AI has done is read this agreement between Hyde Park Football Club and the Yummy Aussie Kebabs Pty Ltd. And it's been able to read the entire contract and extract out the key terms that we care about. Terms like, who are we actually contracting with? What is their address? What's the effective date and the termination date? Which then, by the way, you can use to set up obligations management, like, okay, maybe 30 days out from the termination date, we would want the system to automatically send a reminder to then tell our commercial team or our legal team to start negotiating the contract, or at least make a decision around renewal, right? So by extracting the termination date, we can kind of create those kind of automations. But what's also really interesting is it's also extracted the contract value, which is much further down in the contract, all the way here in a table. So the AI here is smart enough to be able to not just read the fact that some contract says, and the contract value is $100,000. It's actually reading into the table and understanding that sponsorship fee in the context of a sponsorship agreement is the contract value, and that the value, I guess, like position-wise in this table corresponds to 100,000. And this becomes really powerful because you can imagine that based upon policies within your organization, perhaps procurement rules, saying that any contract 100,000 or more may need to be approved by finance, you can see now how someone can just upload the contract for the AI to extract that value without a human having to read the agreement and manually type out or flag or send an email to finance, and for the system to automatically send a notification to finance to be able to sign off on this, right? So not only is this making sort of the business run more smoothly and faster, but it's actually bringing legal and the other parts of the business closer together, right? To be like true business partners in connecting legal with not just the business clients, the requesters, but actually your business peers in other functions like finance and procurement and compliance. So we talked a lot about sort of the use case of extracting these contract values and using it to drive workflow. But there's another use case that I would love to show you, which ties into the final piece I want to show you today, which is matter management. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, these are very specific terms. What if I wanted to add a 6th term or a 7th term, or can I change these? Yes, you can. You can change these very easily. It's very similar to just typing out the term that you want in the definition, and the AI is able to then learn that in an instant and look for the new term. Let's say the new term is, I don't know, like extract for me the liability cap. It'd be able to do that as well. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we push this set of data into a matter management system. Because of this use case being that we want legal to review the contract, in this case, the request is not handled using self-service like we saw with the NDA. It is instead pushed into the queue of the legal team. And so here, if I click onto the matter management module, I'll hit refresh. You'll see that matter ID 194, the sponsorship agreement for Yummy Aussie Kebabs, has just come through. Now, again, I know that some of you may have come across matter management systems before or legal ticketing systems before. I want to highlight a few differences here. The first is that I didn't have to manually create a matter. The matter was created from the request itself. It's all automated through, which is a very big, I think, limitation of matter management systems historically is there's often a big adoption challenge because after a long day of reviewing contracts and giving advice and putting out fires, we're asking lawyers to also then manually create matters and like change statuses and fill in information about the work that they've done. And if it's something as simple as an NDA and it takes them, I don't know, 20 minutes, 15 minutes to handle an NDA request, but then they spend 5 minutes creating the matter, you can see why adoption's been pretty poor. So the first thing is we automatically create matters so that the lawyers don't have to do it. We also automatically assign things like priority and statuses. That's all automatically assigned based upon the rules that you set, right? And so in this case, we might consider a sponsorship request a high priority. And yes, you can customize all these as well, by the way. None of this is actually fixed. It's completely customizable from what fields you like to track to the naming and the fields values. But I also want to take you over into the request itself. So this is the one that's come through. You can see on the right-hand side that a lot of the information about the request has also been populated. It's not just creating the request, it's also sending through information like it's actually a sponsorship agreement as opposed to any other types of agreements that we might typically handle. It's with Yummy Aussie Kebabs. It's a commercial type of agreement, right? And there's a whole bunch of different fields that can be pre-populated again from the request itself, and even the person who's assigned to work on this can be automated as well. I was speaking with a customer the other day. They said, we don't particularly want some of our requests to be automatically assigned because it kind of puts a lot of pressure if someone's just watching their, paper stack, pile up. You don't have to automatically assign either. This could be completely unassigned, and we have the ability for it to for people to pull the task onto their own queue themselves, or have a more agile approach to where like for example, Telstra runs a lot on like agile methodology, so they'll have stand-ups where they might have a person who's allocating and prioritizing every single day who's working on what. But I also want to show you something like a previous request that's a bit more built out. Let's jump into, let's just go this one. You can see here as well, what the matter management system does is it has a full audit trail of all of the emails and communications that pertain to this particular matter. So this is really great for when people go on leave, or when someone leaves the organization, or when you just want better collaboration between the team, for people to see what has been the advice or communications that have happened against this particular matter. This is all automated, by the way. So whatever emails you send for this matter automatically gets sucked into this thread here. And it's very easy to set up. We have the concept of internal notes. So you can add notes for yourself, again, handover notes, or maybe you're designing a bit of a strategy for how to manage this matter if it's a long-running task. And then we also have file management. So every single agreement or document or file that's associated with this particular matter is also centralized. So if someone sends you an email with a file attached, it ends up here. It means that you don't have to dive into your inbox and try to look for that file that someone sent you like 3-7 months ago. It's all here associated with the matter. So it's all in the one place. And that gets really handy from a knowledge management perspective. I've seen use cases where people say, oh, I've just got a new GDPR request. It's pretty new for me, but let's just see what the team has worked on in the past. And maybe that will give me a sense of some of the advice or questions that have been asked in the past, or maybe the fact that I can reach out to Minwoo here, who has worked on GDPR, and ask for some help. For those of you who are more on the legal ops side or senior legal leadership, there's the ability to also slice and dice this data in different ways. For example, you can manage all of the matters that are high priority. You get a filter for that. Cool. These are the things that are the most urgent. You can even dive into things like a specific person's list. So maybe I'm understanding what Dave is working on. Maybe I'm trying to reprioritize what Dave is working on. This is also a great way for you to manage your own work. If you're finding yourself struggling to work out of like spreadsheet or like a monday.com, this is a very quick way and easy way for you to be able to manage and update your work that you're managing. And finally, dashboards and reporting. So every single request, every single matter that comes through Checkbox, whether that is to a person or to a self-help tool, can be reported on. So you can see here information like the total number of matters that have come through, open, completed, the volume of work. We find this to be really powerful as a narrative when legal needs to request more resources, right? I think we always say, oh, we're so overworked, we need more resources, we need more people. And it's hard for the CFO to just hear about that and say, oh yeah, I believe you, like here's a bunch of money to hire someone new. Often what happens is our customers will have this set of data and they'll be able to show a story where the amount of work or the number of requests have doubled in the past 2 years. And they can then take that to the CFO or the GC and say, look, our volume has doubled, but the headcount has not. So that's kind of why our turnaround times have been suffering, or our business clients haven't been happy with us, or the fact that people have been leaving because we've been burnt out from working overtime just to meet the business's demand. We need to hire people. Here's the data for it, right? We can also see areas of like more popular requests. So this might help us understand, okay, maybe the product team needs more training about like legal matters or legal questions. Maybe we can deploy more self-service in these areas. Or maybe, again, we need to hire not just any lawyer, but a product specialist lawyer, right? So again, these data points help you tell stories, but also be able to help you operationally improve the way that legal is being run. This is all drill down, by the way, which is really cool, by the way. Like you can click into any of these and understand what is making up this particular stat, like what is the actual data that's making up the things that we're seeing here. And again, like everything in Checkbox, it's no code. So it's quite nice to build reporting, because if I'm now interested in budget, I just add that and now budget's part of the reporting here, right? This particular use case has no budget, so it didn't appear in the diagram, but you can see it's added to the data table here, right? Fantastic. All right. I'm going to wrap up soon. I'm going to finish off by just reminding everyone that Checkbox is a no-code product. It means that everything that you saw just then was built without coding. From start to finish, from the AI, chatbot in Teams or email, through to the workflow, through to the matter management. All of the configuration and the flexibility is there without the complexity of IT needing to be involved. We have paralegals, legal ops professionals, deputy GCs, and even GCs literally building their own workflows very quickly on Checkbox and being able to automate and shift time from low value work to high value work. It's all drag and drop. So you just drag things in, connect it up, make changes. And this is not just mapping the process. This is, of course, also creating the software, which means that as I go ahead and say, hello, if I were to see now the start page run into the yes, no page, no takes me to the end screen, yes takes me to the form, that is now in operation. So when I hit start, you'll see here, hello, no takes me to an end screen, going back and clicking yes takes me to the starting form that I built before. All right, that's all I wanted to show you for today. Hopefully you were able to expand your mind in terms of what is possible with intake, workflows, matter management, and how AI plays a piece in connecting us better with the business, meeting them where they are, minimizing change management, but also the role that AI plays mid-workflow in contract management to be able to extract terms and be able to accelerate the very boring manual work that people don't like to do, the data entry, the reading of contracts, just to pull out manual information. We still have a few minutes, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to type it into the chat or the Q&A. I'm happy to field them. There's a question from Naomi. Sorry. Does the file doc management aspect of the matter management system integrate with the existing DMS? The answer is not out of the box, but we can use our workflow product to do that. So yes, we can push documents from the workflow into a DMS. Thanks for your question. And I see another one from Peter. So Peter asks, I expect a lot of GCs will be worried about Gen AI answering questions for them. Is there a way to review the question and answers? So let me just type answer live there. Thanks, Peter. The answer is yes, it is possible. So there's a dashboard and audit trail for all of the questions and answers of the Gen AI, so people can review them. And the other thing that I would say as a piece of advice that we find with the Gen AI piece is really understand what use cases and scope you want to solve with it. You don't really want to go out and start providing quasi-legal advice or things that are high risk or high complexity. You want to find the things that, just like automation, are low risk, low value, that are really bogging down your team, and have the Gen AI answer that. I've seen, for example, Pinterest use checkbox to monitor their shared legal inbox. And the questions that they're answering are things like, where do I make a contract request? Where can I find this or that? They're more kind of navigation questions, but also sometimes policy questions around, can I accept a gift from a particular vendor of a certain value? So those are the types of use cases that I would recommend for the Gen AI, not necessarily anything deeper. For example, like, I don't know, like here's a contract. Can you flag, the top 5 risks in this contract for me? Thanks for the questions, team. I think that's it. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you all soon enough.